This is the magazine that I have chosen. I have chosen to read Science World. And if you look up here, let me get there. Right here, you can see the date. And that's going to be very important when we go to fill out our worksheet. Once you have the worksheet, you can find it on Canvas. You need to download it into Notability, and then you can watch this video and follow along with me as I fill out the worksheet. As you notice, I've already filled out my name, the date, and a period that I just made up. And then I included the magazine title, which is Science World. And then an article title, I'm allowing you to choose. You can choose whatever article you would like. However, it does have to be at least 1 page in length, so that way you're able to get all the necessary information. If you notice, I added the note where the article must be at least 1 page. And then I also filled in the magazine date as well as the page numbers. I just made it up. I did, however, get the magazine date from the top right-hand corner of the magazine. If you remember, I circled it on the last slide. Moving on to question 1, it asks, what is the main idea of the article? And I request a complete sentence answer. The main idea, what I'm looking for here, is what was the article about? What were the main topics, the main subjects in the article? If you notice, I filled in the main idea with a sentence that I just made up about the article that I chose. And so moving on to number 2, you can see the words text features that I've pointed to, and I've underlined the words be specific. Okay, text features are anything that are not the body of the text. It could be a graph, it could be a picture, a caption, but I want you to be specific and tell me all the features and describe them. Instead of saying a picture, maybe you could say a picture of a shark or a graph that describes the length of a shark at an adult age. A lot of times text features have captions or anything really that you can learn from. In question number 3, I've asked you to list 1 fact that you've learned in a text feature in this article. Notice how I said text feature. I want you to be specific and tell me a fact that you learned from a text feature. Maybe you received the fact from a caption about sharks. Again, I'm just taking the shark example based on the article that I chose from the picture in the previous slide. It has a shark on the front of it. So maybe if I saw a picture of a shark and I learned about how much food a shark eats in 1 day, that would be a very important fact that I learned from the text feature, a picture in the article. I went ahead and completed the first page of the science article review. I inserted just a text feature that I imagined in my mind, a graph listing the length of sharks at adult age. That's what I filled in for number 2. And then for number 3, a fact that maybe I learned from that graph of the recording of the lengths of sharks at adult age. I just listed the fact sharks can grow to be over 10 feet in length by the 4th year. Again, just something that I made up, but is a very likely fact that you could learn from a text feature in a science article. On the last page of the science article review, number 4 asks, what science skills or concepts did you learn about in this article? And if you notice, I am asking for a RATC with 2 to 3 pieces of evidence. Again, RATC, the R stands for restate, the A for answer, T for the 2 to 3 pieces of evidence, and then C, of course, is your conclusion. Now, I've given you some choices for the skills or concepts that you could have learned in this article. The first one here is problem solving. And maybe you learned about problem solving if the article presents a problem and then presents a possible solution for solving that problem. Again, and just the example that I was using, I am imagining that I read the article about sharks, and because that was the picture on the front of the magazine that I chose in a few slides ago, needless to say, I know for a fact that that article would be an example of something that's informational, something that just presents facts and description of sharks. However, I don't want you to use informational if you can at all help it. Informational is kind of the backup plan. I would prefer that you use maybe problem solving or even questioning. Your article might begin with asking a question such as, where do microorganisms live the most on your skin? Again, that's asking a question that it's going to investigate. Prediction or hypothesis, I don't want you to worry about that one right now, just because it's so similar to questioning. I would prefer that you focus on discovering if the article is questioning rather than making a prediction or a hypothesis. But moving on to experimentation. Experimentation is kind of cool. The article would present information about the steps that the author or maybe a scientist took in investigating something. Maybe for the question that I asked as an example, where do microorganisms live the most on our skin? Maybe the scientist is going to list steps for how he collected that data, such as asking the participants to not shower for 3 days, something as simple as that. It's just listing his procedures. It's very similar to data collection. Data collection, however, is going to be filled with a bunch of graphs, a bunch of images of data, maybe charts, lots of numbers. They don't usually have a whole lot of literature, a lot of writing, but a lot of data collection, a lot of numbers. I can't think of an example of a data collection article, but trust me, you'll know it when you see one. Moving on, I don't want you to worry about analysis, conclusions, theories, laws, research. However, the last two, the first one being technology, recently I read an article about a scientist who built Legos and created them and made them into robots. That would be an excellent example of an article that taught us about technology. And then last, but certainly not least, a biography of scientists. A biography is an article that's going to tell about the scientist, maybe his life, how he became a scientist. It's more of a story about that person. Biography of a scientist, maybe you read an article about Albert Einstein and how he wasn't so successful at school, but he later became a very successful scientist, and that would be an example of a biography. And then again, with the informational, that obviously an informational article is presenting information, but I truly believe that every article presents information. So I would prefer you not pick informational as a skill that you learned with reading an article. Finally, I went ahead and completed number 4, answering what science skills or concepts did you learn about in this article. and I'll go ahead and read my RATC for my restate from reading the article. There's my restate. I titled the name of my article Sharks, which again is make-believe. From reading the article Sharks, here's my answer. I have learned more about the skill of experimentation. I have learned more about the skill of experimentation. That is my answer. Then I present two pieces of data. I begin with, in the article, noting where I found the information. In the article, the author presented a list of steps that he followed in order to collect information on sharks. Here's my second piece of evidence. The author and his team of scientists noted how they recorded data, which indicated that the article was about experimentation. Finally, for my conclusion, I begin with, I believe that I too can conduct an experiment about sea creatures. In my conclusion, I just noted something interesting that I found from the article. I put that I believe that I too can conduct an experiment about sea creatures, just recognizing the fact that the article was about experimenting with sea creatures, and particularly sharks. I would rate, even though I wrote it myself, I would rate this RATC a 4, which is a 100% on my scale. It kind of goes above and beyond. It's very specific, and the grammar is excellent, if I do say so myself. So if you ever need an example of a RATC, you can reflect back on this one. I think it's a good example for you to reference. Thanks for watching this video about science article reviews. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. You can also look on Canvas. I'll try to keep some updated information about science article reviews, and I will let you know if we have them for homework. Hopefully after watching this video, you now know how to do them and can get a perfect score, as well as learn more about doing science article reviews.